Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. Today's episode is presented by Golf Dojo, your space, your time, your game. Bring your game to Golf Dojo, Western New York's best indoor golf experience. Visit mygolfdojo.com. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you very much, as always, to everyone out there for watching, listening, following, subscribing. I appreciate y'all very, very much. This is an episode that I am very, very much looking forward to doing. A good friend of mine, one of my best friends in the podcasting industry, so to speak, one of the very best Buffalo Bills content creators out there. And he's back. He's back after a couple-month hiatus. My man, we'll talk all about that. Some Buffalo Bills. Bruce Nolan from the Bruce Exclusive. What's going on, Bruce? How you doing?
Hey, Pat, it's a party, man. Disco balls, dancers, dubstep, the whole thing. I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
I am legitimately excited to have you on, man. It's been a while. I mean, you do my annual Podcasters Roundtable, yourself, Joe Marino, Greg Thompson. It's always one of my favorite episodes to do all year, where we talk nothing but podcasting. We're going to talk at least some Buffalo Bills today, but kind of going off what we usually do with the group. I want to get to some podcasting stuff regarding you, because it has been an incredibly interesting couple months for Bruce Nolan and the Bruce Exclusive. But first and foremost, how does it feel to be back in the podcasting realm? Your show re-debuted last week, which we'll talk about.
It feels great. I mean, I didn't expect it to feel differently than great, but I will openly admit that it feels better than I thought it was going to feel. Yeah. I think that the response has been fantastic. I think that people were excited to have my show back. I think that the listeners who had kind of integrated my show into the Thursdays were excited to have it back. I think it's nice that it gets to drop again on Thursdays the way that it has historically dropped. And I think that there's kind of a core group of people who just, the message sort of resonated with them, right? The content delivery sort of resonated with them. The peculiars of the content resonated with them. And for them, they weren't ever going to go somewhere else and get that type of thing. So for them, it was something that couldn't be replaced. And that means a lot to me when they tell me, hey, I can get Bill's content. Like, I'm not sitting here and operating under assumption that somehow my Bill's content is so vastly superior to everybody else's that how could you not possibly listen to my show, right? That's not really the reason why you do it. It is, I care a lot about the content. I work really hard on the content, but the reason people do it is because, they connected with me and I connected with them. And, we message back and forth on social media and we have inside jokes together. And it's part of this small, kind of tight knit niche community that we all have, where it's this weird thing where I'm simultaneously very detached from them because it's not my real face and not my real name and not my real voice and all this stuff like that. And they've never seen me and things like that. But also it's very connected because isn't that layer of, I don't want to say distance, but almost that layer of standoffishness that comes from the idea that this person is, in Hawaii podcasting, or he's in Northern Canada or wherever it is. Right. And he's this face on a screen that feels distant from me. It's almost like, because they can't see me, because they don't know that, it's almost like it's just about the content, right? And it's allowing themselves to connect with the content. And so that has been really special for me to listen to the way that people have accepted me and the way that they are excited to have me back. I was hopeful that people would like it and I was excited to do it again, but the response, I will openly admit, has been bigger and better than I thought it was going to be. And I'm constantly talking about it with my wife. I'm like, this is so cool. I just can't tell you how cool this is. And she's like, I know, right? I'm like, you don't understand. It's so cool. Like, I just can't believe they brought me back this way. And they opened their arms up to me like this. And it's been really one of the great joys of my recent memory.
For sure. And, as my buddy, as my friend, we talk pretty much year round, whether it's about the Bills or fantasy football and, our media dynasty league that we're in together, stuff like that. As a podcaster, I'm so happy to have you back. And like I said, we'll talk a little bit of Bills in a few minutes. And if you're living under a rock, or if, I should say, if you are living under a rock and you don't know this, the Bruce Exclusive is back Thursdays. I'll put a link in all the show notes and stuff where you could go find it, because it is now a new RSS feed for that. It's fitting in a way that, it's the Bruce Exclusive, because I kind of feel like this is going to be a little bit of a Talking Buffalo exclusive. I know you've talked some about your return on your show on social media, but I kind of want to dig into a little bit of a lot of the schematics with you being back before we get into some Bill stuff here. So, like in early April, all right, you learn that Vox Media is putting the kibosh on the Buffalo Rumblings podcast. Pretty much at this point, they've gotten rid of all the Sport SB Nation, though, all the sports podcasts, all of them at this point. If not all of them, almost all of them. What was your initial reaction? Was this a complete blindside to you? Because I looked it up, and from your old feed, your last episode was early April, and you were talking about offensive draft prospects that you love. And then next thing you know, there is no more podcast like whatsoever. Like, what was your initial in the moment reactions to all this?
I wasn't shocked by it. Vox had closed other podcast channels before us.
Right.
So it wasn't like this is a completely unprecedented move. Now, obviously you would have liked the chance to have some sort of runway to be able to say goodbye the way that you wanted to. But that, that's just not the way it works. You get an email in the middle of the day on April 4th, and they're like, hey, just so you know, you're done, right? The contract's been terminated, and that's the way it is. So the concept of being terminated, right? The concept of that being shut down was not a shock to me. The timing kind of stank, but there really isn't a good time for that kind of thing. I guess it's better than in the middle of the season for sure. But overall, my reaction to it was kind of, I guess I just kind of shrugged at it a little bit. I didn't like it because I didn't want to go out like that.
Sure.
And so anytime the possibility of I might not do this ever again comes in, you think a lot about the way you get to say goodbye. I think that those memories for people, I think a lot of people, they care about the last words, right? You care about the last words with people that you care about. And I care about my listeners, and they have been very special to me. And I was disappointed that I didn't get a chance to say goodbye the way I wanted to say goodbye. And so a significant driving force for me to continue on was I wanted to go out the way I wanted to go out. I was a satisfying conclusion. Anybody who's ever watched a TV show that didn't get a satisfying conclusion, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
And as a creator of content, I didn't want you to have that. I already know, just so you know, I know exactly how I'm ending it. I've known for years how I'm ending it. And I didn't get a chance to end it that way. You. I already know. I have it written down. I know exactly how I'm ending it. And I didn't get a chance to end it that way. So that was my most significant, disappointment. But overall, this is kind of part of the reason why I compartmentalize, right? Let's say my name is Bob Smith in real life, right? Bob Smith wasn't losing podcasting. Bruce Nolan was. And that's an important distinction. It's part of the reason why I decided to compartmentalize with a pseudonym to begin with, is because I wanted to compartmentalize this type of my identity. Because if Bruce Nolan just ceases to exist, that's a piece of Bob Smith, right? Bob Smith has a section of him that is Bruce Nolan. And so it's different from a mental standpoint. It's part of the reason why I compartmentalized. But ultimately, a big driving disappointment for me was a lack of a satisfying conclusion.
And was there a point, and by the way, that is a great analogy. As I was asking that, I'm thinking of it. I'm like, you know what? This kind of felt like, to me, a TV show that you really enjoy that ends abruptly, where maybe they thought only the season was over, and then it turns out that the series is over. You know what I mean? You don't really have that closure to something that you enjoyed following. That was kind of how I felt at the time. Was there a point where throughout this process, now you talked about how you know what your ending's ultimately going to be, but did this get to a point during the process where you could say like you at least legitimately considered just being done with the podcast and using your comparison, just being Bob Smith all the time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Frequently and often and meaningfully, because ultimately I didn't want to chase that ending. I didn't want to come back just out of spite so that I could end it my way. I also didn't want to be super selfish with that. I didn't want to allow my ego to not let me get fired. You know, I didn't want to do that thing where I want to come back to stick it to the man, right? I want to come back and I'll show them what they missed. Like that's not a healthy mindset, right? That's me allowing my ego to get in the way of the best decision for me. And I don't want to do that. And I don't want to be that type of person. And I don't want to do something out of spite. I want to do it out of joy. So for me, it was a matter of, can I find a future where I continue to podcast and it brings me joy? And if the answer to that was yes, then I was going to keep doing it. If the answer to that was no, then I was not going to. Now, thankfully, I found an arrangement that I feel comfortable with moving forward. And so for me, that's the reason why I did it, because it wasn't good enough to just be mad about not being able to conclude it the way I want to. Because if that's the only reason I'm coming back, that's just ego. And I don't want to be that person. And I certainly don't want my legacy to be that, because that's one of the things I constantly am railing against on my show, is the lack of intellectual honesty and allowing your ego to get in the way of intelligent decisions. And then if I go and do that with my own podcasting, I'm just being a hypocrite at that point, which it flies in the face of everything that I stand for. And I don't want to be that person. So for me, it was a matter of, can I plot a path forward that's going to be a net positive to my quality of life? I continue to do this because it's a net positive. When it stops becoming a net positive, I will stop.
Makes perfect sense. You know, one of the many things I've always enjoyed about you, besides the show itself, obviously, where I feel like either I'm learning something and or I'm entertained by something that you do. And by the way, more on that coming up in just a few minutes. But you also you do podcasting for the right reasons. And like we live in a world with podcasts, just content creation period, I probably should say, where titles mean everything. You got to have the right title. You got to have the right keywords. You got to have the right meta tags. You got to have video. You got to kind of whore yourself out in terms of promotion and do all kinds of things. You don't do any of that shit. And I mean that in a respectful, like complimentary way. Like your titles are what you want your show to be. Like for an example, your re-debut, I had to Google what the word was on the title, which is not the first time something's come out of Bruce Nolan's mouth or something's been written by Bruce Nolan where I'm like, what the hell? I don't even know what that word means. And I got to go look it up. But you kind of, throughout this whole process, and I'm not even talking about just the last couple months, I'm talking about, a handful of years now, have kind of stayed true to what you want to do as a podcaster, right?
Yeah. And that's a big part of the reason why I had trepidation of going into the free agent market. It was that, am I still going to be Bruce on the other side? When I get through with this, am I going to be Bruce or am I going to be Bob Smith cosplaying Bruce? Right. And to me, I mentioned that I want a net quality of life increase. I want to do this because it brings me joy. Right. So what's going to bring me more joy? Right. An additional 50 listeners because I named my podcast the right thing. Right. Or the little chuckle I get out of naming something an epistemological nightmare. Right. And the little chuckle that the listeners get from that. They're like, oh, that's Bruce. Oh, he's so silly. Right. To me, I'll pass up the other 50 listeners, to be honest. The thing that's going to bring me more joy is the chuckles I get by the people who already listen, who already subscribe, right? As opposed to changing something that we all love about it, right? I love it and they think it's funny. And so for me, I'm just going to keep doing it for the people who are already there. It's a little bit like, do you know how you see those phone companies and they go, oh, hey, for new customers, here's $50 off a line. And the customers who have already been there for 20 years, they go, well, what about me? well,
Right.
like, why are you doing this for them, but nothing for me? Right. That's a little bit how I feel like this. We've built a community off these things. There's listeners who listen and they think those things are funny. And I'm not going to change it and lose that chuckle and lose their chuckle just so I can get another 50 or 100 listeners. Like that's not worth it to me. It's about what is it that brings you joy? And that chuckle brings me more joy than the additional revenue of 50 to 100 listeners.
So Vox Media shut you guys down. Not just you, a bunch of other podcasters on that network, many who have since resurfaced, others who I'm assuming will be in the very near future. But anyway, you are, you're one of the more respected, certainly content creators in this space. No question about that. Talk a little bit about the process of being kind of like we'll call it a coveted podcaster free agent. Like give us a little bit of a glimpse into what, maybe being sought after, kind of like an athlete would be in sports. And in the interest of, full disclosure, I would have been an idiot if I didn't reach out to you and say, hey, Bruce, what are you doing? What are you up to? With the thought of, hey, are you looking for somewhere to have a show hosted? And I know I'm one of many who have done that. I know that firsthand, but kind of just talk about like that process. I'm sure it felt pretty good, but kind of give us a little bit of a glimpse of being like that coveted podcasting, Buffalo Bills podcasting free agent.
I did not enjoy it overall. There are aspects of it that I enjoyed. You and I talked about this privately, so you knew that was coming. If I would have said, yes, it was awesome, I loved it every minute, you'd be like, wait, that wasn't what you DM'd me 3 months ago. Right. So for me, there was parts of it that were very humbling, right? I mean, having people reach out and wanting me to join them and to be part of their network or to host my show, I think was really very cool. And the reason why it's really cool is because it's always in the back of your mind as to whether or not it's lip service. I have been fortunate to have great relationships with people in the space, and I have great fondness for many, many people. And I don't say that lightly, because these are people who I've been in the space with for a long time, and I have legitimately great fondness for them. If they sent me a message and said, Bruce, I'm in the hospital, like, can you go, let my dog out? Right. I would say, as long as you're okay with the FBI knowing your address, because they're following me, go ahead and send me your address. I'll go let your dog out. Right. And so that's really humbling, because that's the moment when it's in their self-interest, right? Because when they're operating in the space with you and there's really no benefit to them doing it aside from optics, right? Then you're like, okay, well, it's kind of that level of a relationship. But then when all of a sudden their self-interest and competitive nature, like if I don't get Bruce, somebody's going to, and I don't want to lose those listens, right? Then all of a sudden, the people who actually do want you or the people who don't want you, that matters now all of a sudden, because now it's revenue, right? It's, you like me, but do you actually like the content or not? Because do you think the content's going to draw people? Because if you like me, but you don't think the content's going to draw people, you're probably not going to call when I become a free agent. So that part is pretty cool. I'm not going to lie. It's nice because it's validating. And I think that I would be an idiot to not think that stuff is cool, because it is. And it means a lot to me. I still hated almost every minute of it. And I hated every minute of it because I've been with Buffalo Rumblings for a long time. I had no intention of going anywhere, because I don't need more than what I had. To your point earlier, right? I'm not an overly ambitious guy. I am really happy doing what I'm doing. I don't need more. And there's always that concern and that friction that comes from the potential disconnect in any free agency. This extends out to football free agency. And I've mentioned this philosophically on the show before. What you think you are has to line up with what they think you are. If I think I'm a tight end and you think I'm a wide receiver, we're going to have some negotiation issues, right? If I think I'm a wide receiver 2 and you think I'm a wide receiver 4, then we're going to have some negotiation issues, right? If I think I'm an audio only podcaster, because I'm not going to turn on my camera, right? Who wants to do things once a week, and you think that I'm a 5-day-a-week podcaster with video, then there's going to be some disconnect there.
Yeah.
And so for me, I just wanted what I had. And I said that over and over and over and over again. I said it to you. I said it to the listeners.
Yeah.
I said to everyone who DM'd me, I just want what I had. I didn't need more. And a lot of people, I think, would think that this was an opportunity for me to go get more, right? Let's go get more. Let's go get more money. Let's go get more, influence. Let's go get a bigger network. Let's get something, right? I don't want more. I just want what I had. I was very content just doing what I was doing. And that's where the friction comes from. And that's where the trepidation comes from. That's the reason why the entire process was a nightmare for me overall. It's because I was like, am I going to be able to get what I had? Because that's what I want. And I was very content. Am I going to be that content again? Is everything else that I could possibly do moving forward going to be a step back in quality of life for me? For everyone else, an outsider looking in, they might, oh man, Bruce, this is an opportunity for you to take a step forward. For me, I'm taking a concern about taking a step back.
Makes perfect sense. And, a lot of this process I didn't know about. Like I said, we've kept in touch, and I've talked to other people I know have reached out to you as well. So none of that part really surprised me. But I will say, and I will admit that just, a week or so, a little more than a week or so ago, when you finally made public what you were going to do, I found out just like the rest of everybody. Like, I did not know that ahead of time. I found out in real time, just like everybody else. So let me ask you this. What ultimately made you land on what you did?
I think the first thing was the pre-existing relationships that I had with the people at Buffalo Rumblings who were independent from Vox Media. And I think it's important for me to draw a distinction. I think it'd be very easy for a lot of people to go, you know what? Screw that. Screw Vox. I'm going to stick it to them. Right.
Right.
But the people who I deal with at Buffalo Rumblings had nothing to do with any of that. Right. That's not the way it works. Right? So for me, I think that the pre-existing relationships I had with the people at Buffalo Rumblings, I think is important. I think the pre-existing relationship that I had with Matt, who is the editor-in-chief of Buffalo Rumblings, and the pre-existing relationship I had with Sarah, right, who was heading up the new podcast channel. I think those things matter to me because ultimately my quality of life is going to be dictated a lot by the person or people who are governing my content. The phrase, people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. That phrase rings very true in other things that are not considered quote unquote your job too, right? The people who are governing your content are going to determine the quality of your life a lot more than you think. So for me, that's a huge aspect. The second aspect of this is it's the closest reasonable facsimile to the thing I was doing before. And as I mentioned previously, I wanted what I had. And so what is the biggest drawback of doing what I'm doing now? The biggest drawback is the feed. It's a brand new RSS feed. Now, the upside is it's a singular feed, right? As opposed to Buffalo Rumblings where there was multiple different shows on the same channel. It's just my feed.
Right. It's a big difference too.
It's a very, very significant difference for those who are involved in the podcasting space.
Yeah.
But the thing that I hate doing the most, the thing that I am the worst at is marketing. I am, as you probably established, right? I am not a marketer. I'm not good at it. There are weeks I forget to post my pod on social media because I'm just having a good time, putting out the content, and I'm like, oh, wait, I should probably tell people to go listen to my show. I have to actively, I have a reminder on my phone now, Pat. It tells me, hey, did you post your show to social media this week? Because otherwise I'll forget because I'm just, humming along, doing my thing. And so I think being able to simultaneously accomplish those things where it's the closest reasonable facsimile to what I had, their relationships with people I already know and have built-in trust levels with. And on top of that, I have someone like Sarah, right, who can help me with the setup, who can help me with the marketing, who can help me with I don't want to call Picasso's and be like, hey, do you want to sponsor my podcast? Like, I don't have the guts for that. Like, that's not my thing, right? I still want to tweet at Crumble Cookies like every week and just say, guys, have I got an opportunity for you? Right. But because, cookie crumbles, the whole thing. But I just can't do it. It's just not who I am. I'm not a salesman, right? That's just, it's not my thing. So for me, that is a big convergence for all the things that I wanted, which is ultimately why I ended up where I ended up.
And I'll tell you, I'm happy you did. And I love Matt, and I really love Sarah. She's one of my favorite people. So, yeah, great fit. And I understand all that. One last question, then I want to take a break here. So, I know that you've operated under the premise that you didn't really want much, if anything, to change. Completely understandable. That said, though, did this time off like kind of get the juices flowing again? Like you were still, it's not like you completely disappeared and you fell off social media in the content space. Like you did a pre-draft, a mock draft with me on this show. You've been on other shows. So it's not like you've been completely absent, but the time off from having the Bruce exclusive, did that kind of like get the juices flowing maybe even a little bit more now being back? Like I kind of sensed in your first episode last week. And again, after you're done listening to this, if you haven't done so already, make sure you go check out this week's Bruce exclusive. But like a heightened sense of energy I felt listening, obviously audio only with Bruce, but I even just listening, I felt like a heightened sense of energy. Like it was not that you weren't enthusiastic before, but like I just felt it a little bit more last week when you came back. Like, I guess my long-winded question here is, did those juices get flowing like even more so than before starting with last week?
Yeah, to your point, juice has never really been an issue for me overall.
No.
But it did give me something that I rarely do, which it gave me a break. I don't think the time off, whether it was for a long vacation where I was, out of the country for, 2 months or whatever it is, right? Or whether it was due to this, I think it would have had a similar effect, to be honest. I think there were two things that gave me juice. And I think the overwhelming majority of it was just the idea that I got to take a break, because I don't take very many breaks. I mean, goodness gracious, I think I've missed like 3 episodes in 5 years.
Yeah, you put shit out on like Christmas or
right.
whatever.
I'm out on Christmas. I'm out on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
I was out from the hospital. Like I did it with COVID. Like
I kind of learned that from you. You taught me actually that now I do I went on a cruise in February and I legitimately truly thought of you. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to not have episodes because you preached this to me before.
Yeah.
People have that expectation that they're going to hear you on a certain time or date. Right. So I made sure I did. Anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah.
And that comes from the fondness that I have for my listeners, right? Like I just, there are people who take their dogs for walks every Thursday, and that's part of their routine. They want to listen to the Bruce exclusive while they take their dog for a walk. And like, I don't want their dog walk to be worse. I know that sounds so corny, but I think about it. It matters to me. I never forget. I had laryngitis. I couldn't speak. I literally typed out the episode and my wife read it so that we would have an episode. It was literally just my wife talking for like 20 minutes, and I was typing it out line by line, recording it with my wife because I promised I would, right? And so for me, just taking the break is enough to give me a little bit juice. I think the other thing that gave me a little unexpected juice is having my own RSS feed. I didn't think it was going to matter. Like I didn't ask for it, and I didn't know it was even coming until Sarah brought it up. Like I didn't demand that. That wasn't part of the, negotiations, right? She just kind of said, "Hey, this is the way we're going to do it." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." Like I didn't know that, but all right, let's go, right? But it does have kind of a cool effect seeing your own individual show with your own individual thing. It kind of makes you feel like you're getting all the benefits of doing it independently with also all the benefits of doing it part of a network. Like I'm getting to have my cake and eat it too, which is pretty cool. And so, yeah, I think that did give me a little extra juice.
For sure. All right, let's take a real quick break, come back. I'm going to play a clip from your intro last week. And if you didn't listen to this yet, you're going to hear it now. You go back, listen to the entire episode. And if you don't know Bruce and you, for whatever reason, you're new to the show, you're watching the show, and for whatever reason, you haven't listened to Bruce before, I'm going to play a quick clip. Trust me, you're going to change your mind real quick. Be right back, folks. All right, I am back with my good friend, Bruce Nolan. The Bruce exclusive is back. Before the break, I mentioned a clip that I was going to play. All right, so when did you do your musical? Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah, it was 2 years ago. I did an entirely musical episode of the Bruce exclusive, which was just parody songs that I had written with my wife about the Buffalo Bills that were intended to take popular songs and modify the lyrics to be funny and be about the Buffalo Bills. And it was still to this day, my most listened to episode.
Yeah.
Thousands upon thousands of people have listened to it. And, if you're not a musical guy, this isn't going to convince you, right? But it was pretty fun to make. And the response was fun because ain't nobody else willing to do something like this. And I think that one of the hallmarks of the Bruce exclusive has always been that I take the content extremely seriously.
Sure.
And I don't take myself seriously at all.
Right.
So if I have to be silly in order to make you laugh, I will do it. Like if I have to look like an idiot to make you laugh, I'll do that too, because it's a positive for me. I'm willing to make myself out to be, an idiot to make you laugh. And this is a big part of that.
You're like a double-edged sword, and I mean that in a good way, because like I said, I learned something when I listened to you about the Bills that I guarantee I probably didn't know before. But in some way, shape, or form, I'm almost always entertained as well. And earlier I was talking about, how you just do the bare basics. You're an audio-only guy. You're going to have a title that fits your show, and you don't give a shit if it fits, certain demographics and things like that. But when it comes to your creativity, it's like on another level. You talked about the musical you did a couple of years ago, and I still remember to this day too, how many people were just retweeting and quote tweeting and having these crazy comments. All right, so you come back last week, new show. Again, I knew you were doing a show. I didn't know what you were doing. I didn't know what it was going to be about. I kind of expected you to come back in a sort of big way. What I should have expected, but I didn't expect, was for you to kind of have a little bit of callback, so to speak, to your musical from a couple years ago. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play the clip. This is the opening from Bruce's rebranding, his re-debut episode last week. Come back. We'll hit on that. Then we'll get into some Bills stuff as well. But this shit is awesome. Listen to this, folks.
Hey there, welcome back. Don't have a heart attack. This is the podcast, and I'm Bruce Nolan. Thought I'd try something new. It might not work for you. Hullabaloo because of Bruce Nolan. Yes, the show is called the Bruce Exclusive, and that's me, the real reclusive schmo. I hope you like my show. After my re-intro, I'll get you right to Bruce Nolan. Maybe thinking of my little lady love, and Mrs. Nolan, she is one fair maiden. Of course she came along to help my stupid song, or else I might just throw a whole parade in, 'cause my lyrics never were this practic, nor as wildly acrobatic. Yes, if this shit didn't bless, it'd really be a mess, and she'd be screaming,
Bruce Nolan. One tiny problem soon will arise. We cannot do an outro with this music, a boring finale after the show. Wait, I hope that's okay.
I really hope they'll stay.
And listen to the Bruce Exclusive.
That brings us to the end. That's right, we're here, my friend. No one can stop me now but Bruce Nolan. But you might have to wait another count of 8, or maybe longer, for that Bruce Nolan. But I promise that it's worth your patience while I ready my weird cadence song. 'Cause I'm Tally Ho, sponsored by Picasso's. Get ready for the Bruce Nolan.
You really are one of a kind. I'll say that. Let me start by saying that. You really are one of a kind. And one of the things I love about this show is having an opportunity to talk with people like you and kind of dig into stuff like this, as opposed to just straight up Bills talk. Like, I feel like you being on the show gives people a little something different, because you have some time to talk about some of this stuff that you might not when you're doing your weekly football podcast. I probably could spend the next hour just asking you questions about that specifically alone. The two things I want to point out is, A, how long did that take you to put together? Like, how long was the process? You come up with a song. I know you did the whole musical thing before, but even just like that was about a 2.5 minute song. How long does that take you to write?
It came to me a little while ago, and that tune is the opening to the television show Gallivant, which was a musical television show that was on for 2 seasons. One of my top 10 favorite shows of all time. And of course, a lot of my top 10 favorite shows of all time were not woefully, they were woefully underappreciated in their time. And so Gallivant is one of those shows. Alan Menken, who is, for anyone who follows music at all, is a fairly famous composer, and he did a lot of the music for that show. And in the show, it is used to introduce our main character, whose name is Gallivant. And so I kind of thought it was funny when I initially heard it a couple years ago, and I just kind of, the idea kind of came to me a little while ago, and I thought, you know what? I think I could fiddle with this. Like, I think I can make something out of this. So I just started jotting down some stuff, and I actually have the lyrics handwritten next to me right now. And I was crossed out and pens were scratched out. And I go, oh, I don't want to use that. I want to use this. And I think the total amount of time from the time I thought of it to the time it was well written was probably 2 days. The amount of time that it actually took me to record it took me about an hour for my part. And then it probably took me another hour for Mrs. Nolan's part to do. And I don't have the type of recording equipment that you would use in like a studio recording. So you kind of got to deal with the fact that the audio quality is not what you want it to be. You could fiddle with it all the time you want, but you're never going to get that same well-rounded noise that you got if you did it in a studio, because the mic's not designed for that, right? The mic is designed for podcasting. And so
it's kind of the appeal, though.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of the appeal. And it was a lot of fun. And ultimately, the reason why I did it was because I wanted the opening episode of the Bruce
Lost you for a brief second there, Bruce.
Oh, am I back now?
Yep, you're back. Go ahead.
So the reason why I did it was ultimately I wanted the opening episode back. I wanted it to be a love letter to the listeners. And that is the things that they loved about the show. They loved the musical stuff. They loved the quirkiness. They loved the moral philosophy, right? They loved this is the stuff that they love, right? They loved the weird titles and the thing and I just wanted to do something that captured the things that they loved about the show, right? It was supposed to be a love letter to them. And it was a thank you for listening. It was a thank you for being here. Thank you for the outpouring of love that you gave me when I was gone. I mean, I got emails and messages and, I got Discord messages and all sorts of stuff. And just people pouring in saying, hey, if this is it, like if this is the end, then I just want to say thank you. But I hope it's not the end. And I really love the show. And this is the stuff. I had a farmer tell me he listens to a ton of podcasts and he always wanted to make sure that he had mine in queue, and things like that. And so that's the reason why I did it. I did it because the entire opening episode, I didn't want it to be, well, let's get caught up on all the builds topics. I wanted it to be a love letter to them. And that's what they wanted. So that's what I wanted to do.
I was having some technical difficulties, but we still got all that. I'm just going to have to crunch it together when I do a little bit of editing here, but we got the gist of all that. The other thing I wanted to add about the song itself as well with Mrs. Nolan is 2 things. Number one, a lot of people will say they're well supported. When you do a show, big or small, with a wife or a husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it may be, you got the support of them. And we've talked about this before. That matters a lot.
Yeah.
But her part, not just being supportive, but literally participating in what you do, that legitimately shows support. And one last take. Mrs. Nolan ain't that bad of a vocalist either. I got to tell you that.
Yeah. And that's another piece, right? The people loved Mrs. Nolan. I've had a lot of people say, hey, if you stop doing it, Mrs. Nolan could just do a show and I would listen to her probably more than I'd listen to you. They like her better than me. And to be fair, I like her better than me too. So that makes sense. But I wanted to have her be part of it. I came up to her and I approached her. I said, here's what I want to do. Do you want to be in? And she said, absolutely. Like, let's do it. Let's do it. And that's the type of, gumption. And that's the type of, support that I wanted. And I just don't think if I designed the opening episode to be a love letter to the listeners, I don't think it would have been the same if she wasn't a part of it.
Right. Well, I'm glad she was, because that made it a lot more enjoyable. And I know you well enough to know that you're not going to be the person who's going to come on this show and brag about it. If I came on your show with what you did last week, I'll tell you right now, I would be bragging about it a lot. But last week, All right. So I follow a lot of Bills content creators. I'm friends with a lot of them. I track them, of course. I have a show, and I know other people have a show as well. I've been in the top 200 in the United States on the Apple Podcast football charts many times. Cover One's there a lot. Shout fixture there. Joe Marino lives in on the charts. You come back last week, you got your own feed. Again, this is just the Bruce exclusive. This is not just Buffalo Rumblings at this point. Number 4 in the United States at one point on the football charts in the entire United States. Not long after you come back and you release your first episode under your new umbrella. I don't care how grounded you are. That had to have been an absolute amazing feeling. Being number 4 in the United States in football.
It was, I'm going to try and do this without getting emotional. It was special. It was special to me because I think that when you're part of a large network, like I was at Buffalo Rumblings, and when you're all on the same feed, you can feel very exposed when you're out on your own feed all of a sudden.
Sure.
I'm not getting assist listens from the person who listened to the show before me and then just bled into Bruce exclusive. Like, I'm not getting any help from that. And it's a completely dry feed. And I would be lying if I said that I expected even close to that level of reaction and reception. It would be a lie. And I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to lie. I wanted the people who had emailed me. I wanted the people who had messaged me. Like, those are the people I wanted to listen. I wanted them to know, hey, you cared enough about this show to message me. I want you to know it's out there again. And it's because of people like you who messaged me. And the response was so much bigger than that I didn't really know how to process it. Of course, I deflected with humor because that's what I did, right? I said, oh, well, apparently there's a market for musical podcasts who do zany metaphors and things. I deflected with humor because that's what I do. But in a very private moment with my wife, I just looked at her and I said, I don't get it. It doesn't feel real, but I don't feel worthy. And this is funny. I don't want to. If I can be completely candid, I don't want to. I don't want to ever get to the spot where I feel like I deserve this. I don't. Because I was thinking this a lot when I was during my time off. And I thought a lot about that. The people who are happiest in life are the people who are the most grateful. And if I constantly feel that every positive stimuli that comes my way is something that I earned, then I'm not going to treat it like a blessing. And if I don't treat it like a blessing, I can't be grateful for it. Right? And that's the way it is. So the reason I use the term grace all the time with my listeners, that you showed me grace, is because grace is giving me something I don't deserve. But if I think that I earned it, if I think that I deserve this, right? You know what? I put in the work, right? I've been doing this a long time. I deserve this. I deserve these listeners. Then I'm not going to get joy from it because I think I earned it. I think I own it. I think it's me. It's not me. It's them. So for me, I don't want to feel that way. I don't want to feel like I can just pound my chest and say, look at me go. I can be grateful for that. And I can think that that's amazing and cool. And I can be excited about it. But I don't ever want to own it because I'd much rather get to the spot where I can just allow myself to feel blessed by it, because then I can be grateful for it. And I want to be happy. And if gratefulness is what gratitude is, that corresponds with happiness, then I want more of that. How do I get more of that? I get more of that by allowing myself to feel blessed by something instead of allowing me to feel like I earned it. Like, I own this. I deserve this. And so I don't want to ever say to myself, I deserve this, because if I did, I'm robbing myself of the ability to be happy. And I don't want to do that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I was genuinely happy for you to see that. That was awesome to see people come back in flocks to listen to you again, to be excited about you again, to see a lot of the comments that I've seen on Twitter or X or whatever the hell you want to call it now about the return of the Bruce exclusive. As your buddy, man, it made me feel really, really good and really happy for you as well. Before we get out of here, I suppose I probably should ask you at least one or two Bills questions. Obviously pretty good timing. The Bruce exclusive is back. Buffalo Bills training camp is almost back. And this will be a general question, so you kind of take it wherever you want to. But as camp gets started, and I know you'll be talking about a lot of these topics on future episodes of the Bruce Exclusive, but like, what are a couple of Bill's potential camp storylines that intrigue one Bruce Nolan the most right now?
I would love to see the development of Kyrie Elam under a different defensive coordinator.
Mm.
I have my eye on 2025. The Buffalo Bills deciding to restructure Rasul Douglas and not extend him this year made my ears perk up a little bit. And I'm thinking to myself a little bit about what Brandon Beane said way back when the Buffalo Bills acquired Kelvin Benjamin. When they acquired Kelvin Benjamin, Brandon Beane talked about how important it was that he didn't have just that year on his contract, that he wanted to trade for somebody who had at least a little bit of time left on his deal. And it's the same thing with Rasul Douglas. And so they decided to trade for him, and they didn't extend him, but they did restructure him. So to me, all of a sudden my ears perk up now, and I go, okay, are we potentially talking about 2025? And I don't want to go into 2025 and go, the Bills need to draft a corner in the first round again. Like, are we going to be back on that train? I would prefer to go in going, hey, Kyrie Elam had an opportunity to play at outside corner this year, maybe late in games if the Buffalo Bills are up, or, he had a chance to show some snaps, right? Maybe Christian Benford's being rested for some reason or whatever it is. I would very much like to see Kyrie Elam under a different defensive coordinator. And I think that Bobby Babich has the type of energy and the type of teaching skill that I think could get through to a player like that. Now, I'm not chalking up Kyrie Elam as the answer at this point. In fact, anything you get from him at this point, I consider to be a bonus. But I'd very much be interested to see if there's something there that the Buffalo Bills can end up getting out of him. That's something that's on my mind. The other thing that's on my mind is James Cook, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, and the running back room. I think that the assumption that everybody made, and I talked about this in the podcast in my first week back, is that James Cook is ready for, takeoff, right? He's going to be, Christian McCaffrey. He's going to be something ridiculous where he's getting a huge volume and he's getting touches every sort of way. And I think a lot of that comes from the vacation of Stephon Diggs' targets, right? All of a sudden they're vacated. Poof, they're gone, right? Well, they got to go somewhere. It's not like Josh Allen's going to throw for 2,300 yards and this is going to be a 70% run offense. That's not happening at this point. So it has to go somewhere. Where are they going? And people naturally go to James Cook as being someone who can get more volume. And Ray Davis is a sneaky player for me. I think that Ray Davis is a sneaky player because I think that Ray Davis has an opportunity to be the kind of player that they wanted Zach Moss to be. And for me, if you have that type of player and you've previously established that you don't really trust James Cook in pass blocking situations, then, what if he pass blocks as well as Latavius Murray did and runs the ball better than Ty Johnson? Is that not a player who's going to all of a sudden start eating into touches? I'm not saying Ray Davis is going to be RB1 for the Buffalo Bills. I'm just saying that I'm interested in what that workload looks like because I don't know if this is I want James Cook to be RB1 by a mile. Like, I don't know if that's even their philosophy. And it'll be interesting because I don't know that they had options last year. Latavius Murray kind of fell off a lot last year when it came to rushing effectiveness after a really strong 2022. What if you had a better player? Like, what if you had a better player behind him? What if Damian Harris hadn't gotten hurt? Right? Like, what would that have looked like? Would James Cook have gotten the same level of touches under Joe Brady if Damian Harris was healthy? I don't know. But I think we're about to find out with Ray Davis. And so I'm interested in that.
I want to go back to Kyrie Elam real quick here. Are you a little bit surprised, with the moves they made? Obviously not big moves this offseason, the cap and stuff like that. But right now, going into camp, you talk about him being one of the guys you're most intrigued to see. I would almost take it a step further. I think he's one of the more important players, at least as things stand right now, because he's your boundary CB3. The last couple of years, they've had that kind of like Dane Jackson security blanket, high floor, maybe low ceiling. Don't know what you got, though, right now in Kyrie Elam. What I do know from watching the Bills, or even just recent years, we'll call it, both corners don't play 17 weeks. Something always happens, it seems. So that third corner, that outside third corner is going to matter. Are you a little bit surprised to this point that Brandon Beane either A, didn't sign a veteran free agent corner, somebody worth noting, or maybe even to take it a step further, has traded for one at this point? I
had a moment of surprise, but my immediate thought after my moment of surprise, like when when I sensed myself being surprised, the reactive Bruce said, I shouldn't be. I shouldn't be surprised. Right? This is a team that's led by a head coach who consistently rolled out 7th round picks and undrafted free agents at corner and said, yeah, I can make it work. Right? What's that? You want to sell insurance? Come over here. You want to be a starting NFL quarter? Well, I'll help you. Like, that's the way it works. If there's one thing we should probably trust Sean McDermott on, it's the ability to manufacture a defensive backfield. And so I will admit that, to your point about Kaiir Elam and specifically Dane Jackson, you said high floor, low ceiling. And I think it's really important because we haven't seen a floor at corner as low as we saw with Kaiir Elam against the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2023 from a Sean McDermott defense in a long time. Right now, Kaiir Elam is the lowest floor corner that we've seen get meaningful snaps for the Buffalo Bills in a long time.
Yeah.
And the fact that they saw that and still let Dane Jackson go and didn't backfill. I mean, do they love Jamarcus Ingram? Is that what's going on? So yes, I'm surprised, but I don't feel like I should be because the behavior tracks with what we've seen.
Makes sense. All right, let me end with this. This is a little, admittedly, kind of a short-sighted question, so to speak, but unfair too, because we haven't even started training camp yet. But evaluating this like rookie draft class right now, how much do you think it will be able to help the Bills in this specific 2024 season? I know when you draft, it's not just about the present. It's as much about, or sometimes even more about, the future, for sure. But right now, this is still a team, despite what some national people might think, they're trying to win a Super Bowl right now this year. And they're probably going to need some contributions from that rookie class to make that happen. When you look at this rookie class, what do you see in terms of players that what they'll be able to do to help the Buffalo Bills this season in 2024?
I would be surprised if right out the gate, we had week one instant meaningful contributors from this Buffalo Bills draft class. When I look at this draft class, I look at Keon Coleman, Cole Bishop, Dwayne Carter. I look at Ray Davis. I look at places like this. I think to myself, this is like a restock the pantry sort of thing. But it's not restocking the pantry because you need to make dinner tonight. It's restocking the pantry because there's a storm coming and everyone rushes to the grocery store to get toilet paper, right? And then you end up not using that toilet paper because the storm's not that bad. Why do we always go for toilet paper? Like, why is that the first thing that everyone leaves, right?
Always.
There's a stand-up bit in there somewhere that I'm going to work on at some point. But open mic night, Bruce Nolan. I just wear a bag over my head. But the thing for me is when I look at this rookie class, I would like contributors from this rookie class because obviously everybody wants contributors from the rookie class. But I'd be shocked if any of them contributed meaningfully early. Ironically enough, I can see a very reasonable chance that the player who gets the most snaps week one from this rookie class is Ray Davis. Like I can imagine a world like that. Dwayne Carter, I loved, right? But you're still a rotational defensive tackle at that point, right? Javon Solomon is a fun 5th round pick, right? Is he even going to be active week one? You know, Cole Bishop, maybe a package player week one. I don't know if he's going to start. Sean McDermott's used to veterans at that spot. That might be a situation where they kind of ease him in, right? Keon Coleman, none of the messaging coming out of One Bills Drive since they drafted Keon Coleman indicates that you're going to line him up at X receiver and start him 70% of the snaps week one. Like, none of the messaging has reinforced that. So I think we need to be careful because I don't want to go down the Sean McDermott doesn't play rookies road because that's not true, right? Objectively, that's not true. It's just kind of a narrative that sort of it became its own thing. And I'm like, well, the data doesn't support that. Like, that's not true, but it doesn't matter. It's too late. It's part of the brand now, right? People who don't like Sean McDermott now have made it part of the brand, even though like there's lots of data that says that's not true, but it actually might be true this year, really early on. So for me, I want to be patient with this rookie class because the minute we drafted them, I felt the same as I do now. This is not a Sean McDermott thing. This is just a structure of the positions that you picked and the types of players you picked. I do think they are players who we're hoping are going to be contributors a little bit farther down the road.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how crazy do you think I am for having a take that I think I might stick with, at least right now, I feel like it. And that's this. As a rookie, MVS is going to have more receiving yards this season for the Bills than Keon Coleman. That is not me shitting on Keon Coleman. I think Keon Coleman is going to be a perfectly fine player. I just feel, kind of to your point, he's going to start slowly. MVS has more yards this year. Scale 1 to 10. How nuts am I for thinking that?
That's not nuts at all. That is an extremely, I mean,
good.
6 out of 10, right? Slightly over completely normative, maybe. Like, it's one of those takes that you say it out loud, and if your initial jerk reaction might be, well, that's crazy. But then as you kind of digest it, you go, I mean, is there a world where Keon Coleman catches, 40 balls, right, for 480 yards and 3 touchdowns, and MVS catches, 47 balls for 530 yards and 2 touchdowns? Like, yeah, no, that seems, can you not imagine that? Like, if you phrase that just that way, and someone can literally not even see that, like they can't even function in a world where that's true, I don't know, man. It's that seems completely reasonable to me.
I'm ready for camp to start, dude. I'm at a point now. I've been doing these shows 5 days a week now for so long, and I need some things to happen. There's a lot of projecting going on, a lot of which is what we do, especially this time of year. But anyway, dude, I am seriously, I'm incredibly happy that you're on the show. I am even more so happy that the Bruce exclusive is back. That was a big part of my Thursday mornings. I would get up in the morning, get myself ready to be in my home office, and that would be one of the very first things I did is I would put on the Bruce exclusive every single Thursday. I felt like legit learning something every week and quite often entertained. So if you have not done so already, in fact, after you listen to this or watch this, your episode will either have dropped or is dropping at the same time. Make sure you go check that out. Make sure you follow Bruce, who, by the way, about to hit that 20G mark, man, on Twitter X. Hell, man, maybe by the end of this week or so. Only like 200 or not even 200 shy of 20 grand. That's just awesome, man. But make sure you check out the podcast. Make sure you follow my guy Bruce as well on Twitter X. Thanks, buddy, man. It's so good to have you back, for real.
Hey, thanks, man, for having me. I appreciate you being willing to sit down and spend a huge chunk of the time not talking about Bills. But, I don't think I was going to get a chance to say thank you quite the way that I got a chance to with the show. So thank you for having me. And thank you for taking the time to ask those types of questions, because it just gave me another opportunity to tell people how much I love them. So I appreciate that.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching and for listening. Be back, brand new episode soon. Talk to you guys later.